Hi guys, welcome to the Empower Hour. I'm Maile Scarpino and I'm here with Dr. Ed Bieda. He's a psychologist on the island and he's also my practicum advisor at the Hawaii State Drug Court. So welcome Dr. Bieda, why don't you tell us about yourself?
Sure, okay. I don't know where I should start. I've been in the field in mental health for at least 18 years, so starting in '96. I've had all kind of different experiences in the field of mental health. I've worked with teenagers, I've worked with small children, I've worked with elderly, I've worked with adults in all kind of different places and phases in their life. So some of the places that I've worked are in community centers, community mental health centers. I've worked for the state of Hawaii. I've also worked for the state of California. I worked in prison over there. And I currently am working with Hawaii Counseling and Education Center, and they're a community mental health counseling center. And we teach a particular kind of way of life or understanding to the people that we work with. Beyond that, I also work with Mauna Kea Malama, which is a clinic, and I do neuropsych evaluations as well as ADHD evaluations and other sorts of psychological evaluations as well.
Do you want to explain what a neuropsych evaluation is? Because
okay.
I don't think a lot of people know what that is.
Okay, I can go there. Generally, people get a neuropsychological evaluation when they have some sort of head trauma or problem going on that they've experienced. So they might have had a heart attack, they might have been injured at work, they might have hit their head in some other way, shape, or form. And so now they're not functioning like they used to be able to function. So they might have memory problems, they may have speech problems, they may have attentional problems, and then they may have just problems in general with trying to mask behaviors that are inappropriate. So they might just blurt out stuff, or they may get up and do things when they're supposed to be sitting down. So a neuropsych evaluation would look at what kinds of challenges the person has, and then how to go about fixing that or repairing your brain, because your brain is very plastic and it can create new pathways. Just because a pathway has been damaged and no longer works doesn't mean that a person can't recover. They can recover their abilities if they continue to work at it, and their brain can actually create new pathways to accomplish the same thing with whatever's left.
And isn't there a new type of therapy that they're doing with machines to help the pathways?
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's necessarily a new thing, but there's biofeedback machines which show brainwave patterns, and then the person would be hooked up to it, and then they would show the person as when they're calm, and then when they're agitated, and then teach them to calm down, and they could see it visually, the output, to see how that works.
Neat.
Yeah, it's very interesting kind of work. I don't do that, but it's interesting.
So what got you originally interested and involved in psychology?
Oh boy, what was it initially? Well, I always was kind of curious as to why people did things. And I always wondered for myself, why was I doing certain things, and trying to, as a kid, figure out why someone would say something, or why somebody would do something.
Right.
You know, and trying to just say, I wonder what that's about, you know, and I wonder how that works. So that's kind of how I got interested in the field of psychology. I think that was kind of a lifelong thing where I was always kind of thinking in my mind, I wonder what's behind that.
And then when you went to college, you were just like, I'm going to go into psychology?
Well, I wish it was like that. No, nothing that fantastic. I initially went into college and I thought I was going to be a fighter pilot.
Okay.
So, and I thought I was going to also do computers and working in artificial intelligence. Now what happened is the first...
Wait, artificial intelligence, that's like completely different than what you do. Like one thing's
Well,
technology and like not talking to people, and then psychology is all about being involved with individuals and...
Well, if you the way I thought about it, artificial intelligence being how could I create something that's like how we are? So
Okay.
could I create something that might be able to talk and interact like we are, you know? So thinking in that terms of programming manner, if you will. And I didn't know if that was possible or not.
I
It
see.
probably is, but at the time I was going to school, it probably wasn't possible. So I took my first class, and I took it from my advisor, and he began talking, and as soon as he talked, because he was very monotone, I fell asleep. And class after class, they would literally have to wake me up and say, class is done. Do you realize this? And I was like, oh, okay, class is done. Sorry, was I snoring? And I was just out of it, you know, not even paying attention.
Right.
I couldn't even stay awake to save my life. So as the semester progresses, I'm realizing this is not the route. This is not going to really work for me because I can't even stay awake, and you know, it's something I thought I might be interested in.
But apparently you weren't.
Not anymore.
Right.
Yeah, not working. So I had enough wisdom to go to my instructor, who was also my advisor, and I sat down with him and I said, you know, this is not working for me. Every time you talk, I go to sleep. I can't pay attention. I can't focus. Is there any way that I can pass this class with a D, you know, and I just learn the minimum? Is there any way I could do this, you know, and then you'll never see me again? And he says, you know, learn the calculator, learn how that works, and I'll even teach you how the calculator works. And if you can show me on the final, I'll pass you with a D, and please don't come back. It was like, okay, I could do that. So, and that's what I did. So I passed with a D, and there were several other classes I was taking, Sociology and Psychology 100. I thought to myself, gee, sociology, I don't know any famous sociologists really, and I don't know if there's any money in that, but I sure did know a couple famous psychologists, and I thought, well, it touches just about every fragment and piece of our life, so not a bad thing to get into. And that's how I kind of got interested in psychology, so I just kind of went that route.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, like you said, like psychology does touch almost every aspect of people's lives and our community and just the world. And something I'm wondering, since this is called the Empower Hour, how did psychology empower you, and how do you see it empowering other people?
How did it empower me? Okay. Well, learning about how I operate and how I think about things and how I feel about things helps me to understand what might be going on with somebody else. Now, you know, in our traditional psychology, we're looking at what the problem is, where did it originate from, and how to fix that.
Right.
What I teach now is just basically how we are, how we exist. And that's very different from teaching people about problems and how to fix a problem at a certain level. So I teach people now how they operate and how they can fix things from an entirely different perspective, from a different reality, if you will, from a different way of seeing it. Instead of being stuck at the level of the problem, if they can get calm, if they can get quiet inside, you can realize things that you couldn't imagine before when you were stuck with whatever you were stuck with.
Can you give us an example?
Yeah, okay, example.
Examples are always good. They're helpful.
Recently, I had a challenge with a friend of mine, and you know, he got very aggressive with me, and I was trying to help him out with a relationship question and problem. And so he got very pointed with me, and he got very angry. And he yelled at me, and he actually got up, and he walked out.
Oh,
and I'd never had anybody really do that to me, you know, in a friendly kind of a way, you know, when I'm trying to help somebody out.
Right.
And so he walks out, and I was very I didn't know how to take it. It was kind of like being hit in the gut, being punched in the gut.
Right, because this is your friend, and
yeah, and
you're
I wanted
just trying
to help, and I didn't understand why he was taking things so personally necessarily. Right? I understood the reason he was taking things personally. He was in a low state of mind. very frustrated, very angry, and those are the kinds of thoughts that come out at that level. And so I know that I'm not the one causing his psychological pain, if you will. He's doing it to himself. He's thinking those thoughts, and so he's becoming that because he's thinking that it's real. And so for myself, what I had to realize was it didn't make any sense to try to evaluate why I was the way I was during the session. Meaning, it didn't make any sense for me to think about, well, how come I said this, or how come I didn't say that, or I could have been better, I should have, would have, could have. It didn't make any sense because all I had to know was I did the best I could at that level I was at. And when I felt better, then I could see to do differently, whenever that was. And then I was no longer bothered by whether or not my friend was going to come back and say anything to me, or whether we were going to have the same kind of conversation. It had a different flavor. I had a different feel about it.
So
I
it
no
was
longer
more
thought it was a
internal, like
problem.
you figuring out what you needed to do or how you needed to feel, rather than worrying about what he was going to project onto you.
Yeah.
Type of thing?
Yeah. So instead of me thinking about, gee, how can I be different the next time I meet so-and-so, I was thinking, all I have to really do is just be in a good feeling and be calm, and the next time, whenever that is, I'll know what to do. I'll know what to say. It'll just come naturally out of me without having to work on it, without having to think about it, without having to put any effort into it, really. It'll just flow out of me, no matter how it goes. And as long as I come from that point of wanting to help and being calm myself, can't go wrong.
Nicely put, Dr. Bieda. Like it. Well, with that, we're going to take a short break. This is the Empower Hour, and this is Creating Your Own Reality. That's the episode. I'm Maile Scarpino, and this is Dr. Ed Bieda. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Jay Fidel. I'm host of Hawaii, the State of Clean Energy, which is our flagship show, which plays 4 to 5 p.m. every Wednesday. And the supporters of that show are Hawaii Energy Policy Forum and Hawaii Energy. And luckily enough, we have representatives of both of them right here today to tell you more about what they think about the show. Sharon Moriwaki at my left is co-chair of Hawaii Energy Policy Forum, and she goes first. Sharon?
Thank you. Thank you, Jay. I'm so glad that we have this Hawaii, the State of Clean Energy. This was 2 years ago when we started this, and we have continued it because it's so important, and there's so many developments happening across the state, and we hope you'll tune in every Wednesday, 4 to 5. It's wonderful.
And Ray is Hawaii Energy. Ray, what is your thought about the same subject?
Well, I agree completely with Sharon that we are talking about every Wednesday, 4 to 5. We talk about some of the most important subjects that are affecting the islands now and into the future. Energy, clean energy, we need it. We often run into new ideas that we had not thought about before. We did just today, and I think we're going to have more of that in the future. So come on down and watch us 4 to 5 on Wednesdays, and we'll see what happens.
We'll see you then. Aloha.
Aloha.
Welcome back, guys. This is the Empower Hour. I'm Maile Scarpino, and I'm here with Dr. Ed Bieda. He's my practicum advisor, and he's a psychologist here on the island. And this episode is called Creating Your Own Reality. And we're actually going to get into that more now. As a psychologist, you find your orientation, and you practice within that orientation when you're giving therapy to your clients. And so let's talk about that, Dr. Bieda. How did you find your orientation, and what is your orientation?
Okay, so what I help people with is just learning how their thinking works, the fact that they even do think. It's called the 3 principles.
Okay.
And a man by the name of Sydney Banks realized it one day. And so that's where I teach from. That's kind of the background of where I'm coming from. The 3 principles are fairly simple. It's a very simple, simplistic way of being. And it's in all of us. It's in everybody. And the three principles are mind,
Okay.
consciousness,
Consciousness
and thought.
and thought.
And you can think of them as elements, you know, and elements make up compounds, or what we would call our reality. So mind plus consciousness plus our thinking equals our reality, what is going on for us. So what is mind? Mind is the energy that we are, the wisdom, if you will, behind everything, the knowledge base, the spiritual energy that's out there.
Okay.
And it's in everybody, it's in everything. It's out there. It's that big, large data bank in the cloud that everybody has access to.
Okay.
Okay, that's mine. Consciousness is just simply being aware. So the fact that you're alive, you have consciousness.
Right.
So that you know what's going on. And thought is really where we have the most thinking, if you will, or ideas about what's going on. So thought is basically whatever I think. Mind, consciousness, and thought come together and create that for me. So when I was talking about my friend, I was feeling a little frustrated and a little upset. Now that didn't come from my friend. That came about by how I was thinking about the situation, how I was conceptualizing what was going on. That became my reality. I should have been better. I could have been this. I should have done that. How come I didn't say this? And that's just my ego feeding me a whole bunch of thoughts about, well, next time you got to do this, and next time you got to do that.
And explain really quickly what your ego is, because I don't think a lot of people out there know exactly what the ego is either.
Well, ego, and I don't want to go into psychodynamic or anything like that. I just, very simply put, is our intellectual mind. It is just telling us, you know, kind of what's here and now and what's going on. And it's very analytical, and we do need it. You know, we can't exist without the intellect.
Right.
But it is frequently the thing that gets us into trouble. It makes us think that things are very serious, and we get serious-minded and bottled down and held down by our thinking. And that's all it is our thinking. So if we realize that we're just thinking about this stuff, if we can get quiet, and if we can really just be in a peaceful state of mind, what will come out is a feeling of nothingness. It's kind of like Buddha says there's the great nothingness. And that would just come out, and you'll feel it. And with that feeling, you'll be able to see things very differently. You'll be in a very different place.
What do you mean see things differently?
Well, the mystics will say, you know, are you really hearing? And are you really seeing? And what I think that they're trying to hint at is that there's this bigger thing beyond what we're just experiencing in life. That we're spiritual energy, and we're experiencing life through this form. Okay? So the stuff happens to me, but how I think about it will shape my whole reality, and the whole thought process gets shifted by that. And so where was I going? I'm kind of lost myself.
It's a complicated concept.
It's not really that complex, and I think I'm getting a little out of my head here. Maybe the reason is I'm feeling a little excited. So I think if I could calm myself down, I think I'd probably see this a little bit differently. So I'll just take not a minute, but I'll take a second to take a deep breath and try to say things a lot simply.
Relaxation techniques.
Well, it's not really a technique. I'm just trying to quiet my mind, right?
Yeah.
So that I can be a little clearer. And you can do this in any time. So from moment to moment, we're just making up our own reality. So, I said a moment before, I was feeling anxious and maybe excited because I'm doing something new. And really, that's how I'm thinking about it. So I experienced it that way. So I got a little bit sidetracked with all my thoughts that were going on.
Right.
So in order to just quiet that down, I just take a breath and center myself and see where I go.
So then what would you tell somebody who wants to change their reality? or create a new reality? Like, what advice would you give them, or how, if they came for you for therapy, what would you do with them to make that shift?
So really what you're looking for in your life is just to live in a peaceful, calm state of mind, and just to feel content. If you can do that, everything else is easy, right? And so that's the missing link for everybody. That's what everybody's looking for. Everybody's looking for, how do I get a good feeling? How do I feel okay?
So being happy almost is what you're saying.
Yeah.
That's the missing
Right.
link that everybody's always looking for.
Right, and we all think that happipiness comes from the outside of us, or that bad things happen, and so now I have to feel X, Y, or Z. That's not true. It's just how you respond to it and how you think about it that creates that reality. And if you can realize that I'm just the one creating that, I'm making it this way, you can change it by simply saying, I want it different. Just to have an awareness about it. And if you can be aware about it, that you want things differently, that's the first step to trying to be different. And then from there, it's just about, all right, so how do I be different? And then it's your own wisdom, that universal mind that will help guide you and tell you what to do in any situation, because it's always there. It's
So
your
how do you
internal
get
compass.
that universal mind?
You already have it.
Okay.
You already have it.
So you're born with
Everybody has it. Yes, we're actually created from that energy.
Okay.
Okay, so it's not anything outside of me. It's not in anybody else. Everybody has your own wisdom inside of you, and you are your own wise person, and you have
Oh, I
all the
like
answers that
that.
will work for you. Because I can tell you what would work for me, and it might work really well for me, but because you're different, it might not work all that great for you.
And see, I see that a lot in health and fitness too. I get a lot of people that ask me like, hey, what do you eat? What's your diet like? What's your workout? Like, how I want to lose this weight. How do you do it? And I always tell them, well, what my goals are completely different than your goals and what you're going to be doing. And so let's find a way that's going to work for you, because you're completely different than me, right? So what works for me isn't going to work for you. And
Right.
so I see that pattern here too. That's really neat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, where were we? So anyway,
Wisdom.
yeah, your own wisdom will give you the answers about how to handle things, about anything in life, any situation that you come into, you're having problems with, any situation that you want to know how to handle, you have it. It's inside of you. Now, it may not hit you right away. You may not be able to hear what it's saying, but it's there. It's always there. It's just a matter of picking up the phone when it calls you.
So the first step is wanting to change or wanting to make that shift. Would you say that?
Or realizing that you can.
So realizing
just the
that
fact
you
that I can be different. I have a lot of people who come to me and they're depressed, and they don't think that there's any way that life could be different. It's very sad, because what they have to realize is they're just creating that experience for themselves. That they're creating the experience of, I feel depressed, I feel horrible, and so that gets generated from themselves. And if they want it to be different, it's just a matter of themselves telling themselves, I just want to be different. Now, how do I go about doing that?
I want to shift that energy. I want to be happy.
I want it different. And then when they can get that insight, and it comes from an insight, really, then everything shifts, everything changes, and you become in a different level of consciousness. And when that happens and you have the shift, your life is never the same.
What do you mean your life's never the same?
When a person comes into contact with their inner wisdom, if you will, if their energy, the spiritual energy that they have, and they realize that they're the thinker, they realize that
they're in control of what's going on.
that I'm part of a larger community, I'm part of a larger thing than just myself, then you don't seem all that important anymore. And then you feel more connected to everything. You feel like life has a purpose. And then from there, you just have compassion for everybody in your life. And it just flows naturally out of you. And you want to share this, and you want to show people, and you want to tell people about it. And then it just becomes a part of you because you're part of it.
And you're operating on a higher level of
Yeah.
understanding and being and.
Right. So when your level of consciousness rises, everything in your life rises with it. It can't stay one thing can't stay here while everything rises. Everything comes up with it. It's kind of like the tide coming in. The tide rises and everything goes up with the tide. And conversely, if you get in a bad feeling, in a bad mood, your level of consciousness drops and everything drops with it, But you don't have to get scared. You just have to tell yourself, oh, I'm not in a good feeling. I'm not in a good mood. So I just got to get quiet again to get my good feeling back. And it comes back. Because we are that energy. It never goes anywhere. We're it. It's within us.
And I actually learned this from Dr. Bieda, not all of this, but the whole idea of creating your own reality. And I talked about it when I was interviewed originally. And for me, it has been life-changing. I think it's a great thing to realize that you have the power to change and think in a manner that can get you anywhere you want. And, I felt like it helped me break barriers. Even today, my package that came in the mail, I was telling Dr. Bieda before we went on air, my package came in the mail and there was nothing in it. And I reached inside and there was a hole. And I was like, well, geez Louise, that was horrible. And I was really angry for a while. And then I realized, well, I create my own reality. It's not a big deal. I can get over it. Change my attitude before I came here, so I could be present and happy, because that's always important. So let's get into, I know you worked in the prison system. That's a really interesting field. I don't think a lot of people know about that. And you had first insight, or not first insight, but you have insight firsthand because you worked in the system. You want to tell us about that?
Sure, yeah. Probably not my most favorite thing to talk about. It's prison, yeah. It's just a very difficult place to be for some people. And so you really see...
What do you mean difficult? What makes it difficult?
Since we really make our life what we think it is, right? So I would see people, and prison would just destroy them. Basically, there was no reason to even exist after that. They just felt lower than dirt, and didn't want to go on.
They felt bad about what they did, or who they'd become, or
Well, if you ever work in prison, there's nobody that's ever guilty. They're all innocent.
Okay.
That's the first thing you pick up when you work in a prison setting. They're all innocent.
And how do you react to that? As a psychologist, you're trying to help people, and you keep kind of getting the same story from everybody that they're innocent. How do you react to that?
Well, it just shows me what level of consciousness they're at. Plus, it kind of tells me what the attitude is. Now, some of them, I didn't do it, and here's why I didn't do it. Now, maybe I did it, and they were still contemplating whether they did it or not. To me, I don't know that that's totally important to really own or accept it. I think that was the challenge for them necessarily. They definitely had the consequence of it, whether they liked it or not. And I think it was probably more important for them just to understand how they could feel better, how they could feel differently. Now, being tasked with that is not easy when you're a psychologist. All right. Sorry. So anyway, you get people in there that think all kinds of things, and I'm the victim. Or, you get guys in there, I'm the aggressor, and they have all kind of different thoughts. It's just like having a big city, but...
In one little area.
In one little area, and everybody in that city is thinking on a very low level of consciousness. So the best things that look to do are fight or flight, smash somebody or run away.
And explain that more, fight or flight, because that's an important concept, too, in psychology.
It's a very simple thing. When we get stressed, right, we go to our basic response, which is either we put up a fight or we run away, okay? What some people would call amygdala hijack.
Amygdala is a part of your brain.
Part of your brain, yes. Now, you don't have to be hijacked. You just have to realize that, okay, I'm functioning at a very low level now, and the things that look good to me are to smash things or to run away. So I know that I'm not feeling good, so I just need to not do anything. And If I don't act on any of my thoughts, it doesn't harm anybody. What these people didn't understand was that they were just thinking, and that they didn't have to act on those thoughts. So what you got was a lot of people acting on thoughts that weren't very good because they didn't know any better.
They didn't
And
have
that's
any
the
other
innocence.
coping skills to go off of, or they just didn't know.
Well, they didn't understand how it worked.
Okay.
Yeah, they just thought because I get this thought, I have to do it. You know, or the pull inside of me is so great to do this that I have to do it. You don't have to do anything. You don't. It's just really understanding it's just a thought, and if I get a really strong pull to do something, it just means I'm putting more energy into it than I really want to. You know?
So is that something that you worked on with them, or what exactly did you do?
Okay, so initially, the whole reason I went over to prison was I was in a bad, low state of mind myself. And so I wasn't feeling all that great with myself. And
That kind of goes with the like attracts like, which we talked about last week. Just joking.
Well, maybe. I mean, possibly, because I was feeling really bad. So I maybe in a way to kind of punish myself, I put myself in a place where I knew it was going to be difficult. And then I had gotten away from this understanding, you know, but you can't really get away from it. The way that you get away from it is you think that it's something outside of you, or you think that it's a technique. It's not a technique. It's what we are. It's
part of
it's
how
part
we
of
operate.
us. Yeah, it's our operating system, if you will. So when I was tasked with teaching inmates how to feel better when they had life sentences and they were stuck with people in their cell that they didn't want to be stuck with and had no choice about it, really this became the one thing that occurred to me to teach, was to teach them about health, teach them about how they operate. And through that understanding, maybe they could get an insight for themselves and be freer than people who are on the outside.
Because information's pretty important, don't you think? When you can fully understand how something works, it's almost like you have more control over it because you understand the operating process of it.
Well, if they got an insight, right, then they would know how to come and act and behave from a good feeling, how to operate from health. And that's very different from operating what they're used to operating from, which is not health, which is insecurity, which is fear, which is anger, sadness, all of those negative things that people sometimes operate out of because they don't know any better. And when they can learn that I can feel good too, and I can operate from a different way, a different mentality, then they start to do it. Then they start to see, I don't have to yell, and I don't have to get upset, and I don't have to get angry. I can state why those things are, and I can walk away. I don't have to do those things anymore, and then you're totally different. And then prison can seem like a club rather than the horrible bottom dwelling place it was,
With that, guys, we're going to take a quick break. I'm Maile Scarpino. I'm here with Dr. Bieda. This is the Empower Hour, and we're talking about creating your reality. See you in a couple minutes.
Aloha, I'm Hunter Hevlin, host of Sustainable Hawaii here at ThinkTech Hawaii. You can tune in every week on Thursday at 2 p.m. to see interviews with sustainability professionals from around the state and even further abroad, learning about activities with water management, food security, waste management, and a whole host of other fascinating opportunities to get engaged with making a greener island. So if you're interested in making the transition from consuming individuals to communities of producers, check us out every Thursday. Aloha.
Hi, guys. Welcome back. I'm Maile Scarpino. I'm here with Dr. Ed Bieda. He's my prac advisor and a psychologist here on the lovely island of Oahu. And this is the Empower Hour. We're talking about creating your own reality. And we're going to get back to talking about prison life a little bit and Dr. Bieda's experience working in a prison setting as a psychologist.
Okay. I guess I could share a couple stories. That prison life is very different from any kind of life you can imagine. You've got people telling you what to do 24/7. You've got people that aren't pleasant to be around. And the particular yard I was on was called a special needs yard, or sensitive needs yard. And what that was a big code word for gang dropout, basically. So these were guys that were in gangs in prison, and they squealed on somebody. You know, and in any criminal world, whenever you squeal, it's a bad thing. If you talk, you die.
So they're basically kind of, they would have maybe gotten hurt if they weren't put in jail. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, they would no longer exist.
Okay.
Basically, in physical form. So they were put on this yard to serve out the rest of their time because they had given up information. And what they didn't tell these guys were they would also be on the yard with sex offenders. In the prison, the levels of prison inmates, sex offenders are lower than anything.
Right.
And they're people that nobody wants to associate with.
Why is that?
Most offenders think that that's the lowest form of crime anybody can do. And especially if you do it against a child, it is not tolerated, you know. So if they find out, they definitely will come after that person. And I can't tell you, every day was 3 alarms every day to get on the ground for the inmates.
And what do you think that's like psychologically for somebody to either be behind bars all the time or hearing these alarms and constantly being in a situation where they feel threatened or that they're not safe? Do you think that contributed psychologically to their well-being and how they function?
Most definitely, yeah. It affected my own health too. I mean, you know, you hear the alarm, you're like, my God, what's going on? You know, if you're not used to hearing an alarm, you're like looking around, right?
But then I remember you told me you kind of got desensitized to
Yes.
it, right? By the end of your time working there, you were like, oh, alarm number 5, okay.
Yeah, much quicker than that, actually. It was actually after the first week, you already become desensitized. The yard I was on, it was 3 times a day, you know, and I'm working there 4 days a week, you know, 12 hours a day. It just doesn't affect you the same way anymore. You just don't think about it the same way. And it's like, okay, here's another alarm. Who's getting it again, you know?
Where do you think, like, the void is in our prison system? Or, like, what could be done better for inmates? Or could it be run a different way? So that these people can be, like, you know, put back into society and reintegrated?
Reintegration, yeah, that was facing most of the life inmates. They were really advocating to be given a chance to get out because they weren't going to be given that chance to get out.
I mean, that must be taxing too.
Oh, yeah.
Knowing that you're going to be someplace for the rest of your life and you can't get out, nobody's going to help you get out, and the rest of the world is still going on without you.
Yeah, and it was sad to see, sad to hear, and sad to experience that, and sad to break it to these guys that, you know, the best you got is to feel good as best as you can in here, you know.
And for some people, did that work, you
Yeah,
think?
most definitely. As I began to teach the principles to some of these lifers, they call them, they really took hold onto it, and they got some insights. They got some insights about how thinking and thought works, and how their own reality was being created by whatever that they were thinking. And so they actually got a little bit nicer, if you can imagine. They got a little bit more pleasant to be around. They were even a little bit nicer to the guards, who were probably more appreciative that, hey, I don't have to yell at this guy, and I don't have to get on him. He's kind of complying, you know.
So there definitely was a change in behavior.
I would say that there was a change in behavior with the folks that I worked with who got an insight, meaning something that they were able to touch their spiritual energy, the wisdom that they had within themselves. When they could get into contact with that, then prison was no longer a prison. It was just a place where they were physically being held, but their mind was free to do whatever it wanted to do. Like, you cannot control.
Well, that's interesting.
You can't control what people think. You can't control how their demeanor is. You can control them physically.
And as a community, how can we do this? How can we learn to, you know, not be in need of controlling what's going around us and having that free space for our mind and our thoughts. And
Well, you know, I mean, could you imagine a whole community coming from this particular understanding where they just know that whatever they're thinking, that's creating it for
it
them?
would be pretty amazing.
It would be totally different, because then when somebody did something, they'd just say, oh, somebody's not feeling good, they're in a low state of mind, I don't take that personally anymore. You know, I might say something about how to act differently, but I don't no longer react to it with anger, frustration, sadness. I just see it for, oh, the innocence of it, you know, you're not feeling great. So I understand why that's happening. And it's nothing that I'm doing. You just feel frustrated because you don't feel good.
Right, so it's not taking on those emotions that other people are
Yeah.
putting out there.
Yeah, you become self-sustaining for yourself.
And it comes from within rather than
Comes
being
from within.
external.
Yeah, it's never anything on the outside. It's not something I can get. It's not something I can give you. It's something that's already inside of you that you have to realize for yourself. That's the exciting part, is you have it already. Everybody has it. Everybody here, everybody out there has it.
Self-sustaining, that's pretty neat.
Yeah.
How do you think psychology affects or is important in our community today?
Well, obviously psychology plays a role in everybody's life. You know, if people could see that what the three principles are trying to talk about are health, mental health, and not mental illness, I think more people would be receptive to it.
What do you mean by mental health?
Well, you know, we in the field of mental health, what do we generally talk about? We just talk about problems, right? So we got a
Right.
whole big DSM full of 1,000 pages of nothing but problems.
That's our diagnostic manual. So you have a DSM when you're trying to diagnose somebody with a psychological problem.
Mhm.
So that's what we use in order to create that diagnosis.
Yeah. So and then that's all we sit and talk about, right? So I think we're good at talking about
It
mental
really
illness.
is. That
Yeah.
cup is half full
Yeah.
or half empty rather than looking at it being half full and
Yeah.
constantly. I think in general, just in life, we do that too. We look at all the negatives that people do rather than
Mhm.
being like, wow, you did 500 great things today
Right.
and only one bad thing.
One bad thing. And we focus on the bad thing, you know, and that's just because nobody told us that we don't have to focus on the bad thing. We can just let that go. And, you know, next time I'll be different. It's okay. I can just leave that in the past, because the past doesn't exist anymore. All I got is right now, and the future's coming. So I don't worry about that.
The future's definitely coming, guys. Lots of good things in store. With that, we're going to wrap up the show. This is the Empower Hour. This episode was Creating Your Own Reality. I'm Maile Scarpino, and I'd like to thank Dr. Bieda for being here with us. I really appreciate it. And we'll have lots of fun in our prac work together for the rest of this week. Have a great night, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.